We're hearing a lot these days about competency-based education, and then we're hearing about the badges movement, and we're hearing about credentials. And these are all three different, these are at least three different things. There may be more things than that. Competency-based, I think, is a nice way to think about that. Is a way of just thinking about it is like, take education and separate it from time. It's not tied to the credit hour. You're basically accomplishing the same thing, but you're doing it, everyone likes to talk about it as you're doing it faster, although in some cases you might actually be doing it slower. That's not part of the marketing, but it really, so competency-based education is just this sort of notion of separate the course from the credit hour or from the 3-hour course. Teach what needs to be taught and prove that you've learned it. The credentials movement and the badges movement sort of operates in this other realm over here, a little bit off to the side. I think people like the idea of it because I think people like the notion of credentials and badges as sort of a new reform in higher education, or a new angle on how colleges are getting more modern, because in a way they do reflect an important change. They're a way of putting a credential or putting a label on a body of knowledge that doesn't take a 2 year or 4 years to accomplish. So if people are looking for shorter bites of education, these badges and credentials, other kinds of credentials, are ways to provide that sort of imprimatur of a university or imprimatur of an organization on shorter bursts of education, and let's just say, or shorter, going back to another discussion, or like shorter spans of competencies. You don't have to have a whole set of competencies. Maybe you just accomplished half the competencies, and then you can sort of find a way to reward that. The question I still have about all this whole credentials movement, and I know organizations like Lumen and others are putting a lot of money behind a lot of really important creative ideas behind this. It's a little unclear as to whether there's much pickup outside of the organizations that are issuing the credentials. There are companies that are doing this. There's credentials registries. There's all kinds of badging movements at colleges. But I recently was at a panel discussion with a bunch of industry people, and I asked them, how many of you ever hired anybody based on a badge? No hands went up, So, and when I've talked to folks like the people at Burning Glass, which is a company in Massachusetts that does a lot of analysis they analyze job ads and what people are hiring for. But they basically say there's 200 credentials out there that are really valuable, that are sought after again and again and again, but there's like 10,000 credentials that people have. There are only a very small number of really highly valuable credentials. All that said, even in these discussions that we hear about the value of the associate's degree and the value of the BA, or a BA in liberal arts, let's call it, or an associate's degree in liberal studies, those are sort of the two most generic-y kinds of degrees. Those degrees plus a couple of key skills, coding, statistics, certain kinds of even marketing and sales that you could document on top of that. They've just been a bunch of reports put out at the American Enterprise Institute. If you can combine your liberal arts associate's degree or your liberal arts bachelor's degree with one of these other skills, your salary goes up. So, and the way you demonstrate that is through a credential probably, or a certificate. So the more these certificates and credentials get tied to something that's practical and useful, and demonstrably practical and useful, I think that will start to catch on. The thing that I wonder about is like if every university starts to offer their own set of credentials, is going to be this, the credential isn't going to mean any more than a degree, and we're still going to go back to just a prestige game, and it's not going to really help. They need to be sort of tied back to something that is understandable and verifiable.